The ring that changed everything. The evening sky burned with shades of amber and crimson as the final rays of sunlight disappeared behind the distant hills. The world looked peaceful, yet somewhere beneath that calm surface, lives were quietly shifting toward a destiny that none of them could escape. You had no idea that someone, miles away, was staring at a small velvet box resting on an old wooden table. Inside that box was a ring. Not just any ring. It had been chosen after months of searching. Every tiny detail reflected memories connected to you. The stone sparkled because it reminded them of the way your eyes caught the morning light. The silver band represented promises that had survived years of silence. Tonight, your soulmate finally whispered the words they had rehearsed hundreds of times. I've waited long enough. I'm going to marry them. Those simple words echoed through the empty room. For the first time in years, fear no longer controlled their heart. Love did. They smiled through tears. The decision had finally been made. Nothing, or so they believed, could stop what destiny had already written. But destiny always attracts opposition. Far away. Someone else froze the moment they heard the news. A phone slipped from trembling fingers. No. Their voice cracked. They can't marry. Their breathing became uneven. Because if your soulmate married you, every secret they had hidden for years would finally be exposed. And they could never allow that to happen. Your soulmate wasn't perfect. They had made mistakes. They had doubted themselves. There were nights they convinced themselves you deserved someone better. There were mornings when they almost walked away forever. But every road they took somehow circled back to you. Every conversation reminded them of your kindness. Every song carried pieces of your memory. Every dream ended with your smile. Eventually they realized something impossible to ignore. Running away only proved one thing. Home wasn't a place. Home was wherever you were. That realization terrified them. Because loving someone this deeply meant risking everything. Still, some loves become stronger than fear. The following morning began differently. Instead of hesitating, your soulmate entered the jewelry store where the ring had been waiting. The elderly owner smiled knowingly. I wondered when you'd finally come back. Your soulmate laughed nervously. I kept delaying because I was scared. And today? Today I'm more afraid of losing them than asking them. The owner slowly handed over the velvet box. Then it's time. As the box rested in their hands, something changed inside them. Hope replaced uncertainty. Faith replaced hesitation. For the first time, the future looked brighter than the past. But at almost that exact moment, another person was opening an old photo album. Inside were pictures no one else had ever seen. Pictures connecting your soulmate to events they had desperately tried to erase. If this wedding happens, they whispered, everything ends. They weren't angry because of love. They were afraid because of truth. The wedding wasn't just a celebration. It was the beginning of revelations. Secrets buried for years would rise like forgotten echoes. Some people would finally be forgiven. Others would lose everything. Meanwhile, your soulmate began planning. Not an extravagant ceremony. Not a luxurious celebration. They imagined something simple. A peaceful afternoon. Soft music. Close family. Friends laughing. Your smile. That was enough. They didn't care about expensive decorations. The greatest treasure would simply be hearing you say, yes. Days passed. Excitement quietly grew. The ring remained hidden. Every morning your soulmate opened the box for just a few seconds. Not because they doubted. Because they wanted to remind themselves this wasn't another dream. It was finally becoming real. Unknown to them, someone had already begun making phone calls. Anonymous messages started spreading. Old misunderstandings were suddenly brought back. People who hadn't spoken in years were mysteriously contacted. Tiny doubts were planted like invisible seeds. One rumor. One lie. One misunderstanding. Each one carefully designed to create chaos before the proposal could even happen. The mastermind understood something dangerous. You don't destroy true love all at once. You weaken it little by little. One unanswered message. One delayed phone call. One suspicious coincidence. Until trust begins questioning itself. Yet destiny has strange ways of protecting what belongs together. Every obstacle somehow pushed you and your soulmate closer instead of farther apart. Each misunderstanding became another opportunity to communicate honestly. Each challenge revealed deeper loyalty. The more someone tried separating you, the stronger your connection quietly became. That frightened your unseen enemy even more. Why isn't this working? They slammed their hand against the table. They're supposed to fall apart. Instead, everything they planned seemed to strengthen the relationship. Late one evening, your soulmate drove toward a quiet lakeside. This was where they planned to ask the question that could change two lives forever. They stood near the water. Practicing. Again. And again. And again. Every speech sounded too rehearsed. Too formal. Too distant. Finally they laughed at themselves. I'll just tell them the truth. That truth was beautifully simple. You've become my safest place. My greatest adventure. My strongest reason to believe tomorrow can always be better than yesterday. Will you marry me? Sometimes the simplest words carry the deepest meaning. But hidden behind nearby trees, someone had been watching. Watching every rehearsal. Watching every smile. Watching every hopeful moment. That shadow quietly recorded everything on a phone before disappearing into the darkness. Their next message contained only 7 chilling words. Stop the wedding, before it's too late. Your soulmate never received it. Because someone else intercepted the message first. And that mysterious person whispered. So, the game has finally begun. The morning after the lakeside rehearsal felt strangely ordinary. Birds sang from the trees, the streets bustled with familiar routines, and sunlight poured through windows as though nothing in the world had changed. Yet beneath that peaceful surface, invisible currents were pulling lives toward a collision no one could fully foresee. Your soulmate woke with a sense of quiet certainty. For the first time in years, their heart wasn't burdened by indecision. The ring still rested safely inside the velvet box, tucked away where no one could accidentally discover it. Before leaving for the day, they opened the box once more. The diamond caught the morning light, scattering tiny reflections across the room. They smiled. Just a little longer, they whispered. Soon, this won't be a secret anymore. What they didn't know was that someone else was watching every move from a distance. The mysterious figure who had filmed the proposal rehearsal sat inside a parked car overlooking the neighborhood. They weren't driven by jealousy alone. Their motives ran deeper, tangled in years of resentment, regret, and fear. Spread across the passenger seat were photographs, handwritten notes, and printed emails. Each piece seemed harmless on its own, but together they formed a story that could unravel everything. The figure picked up one photograph and stared at it for a long time. "So you really think you can leave the past behind?" they muttered. They folded the photograph carefully and slipped it back into an envelope marked only with one. "I finally made my decision," your soulmate said, unable to hide the excitement in their voice. The friend grinned. No signature. Only a single sentence. Some promises are built on lies. Your soulmate frowned. Spam? A prank? They deleted the message without giving it much thought. But the sender smiled when they saw the message had been delivered. The first seed had been planted. Elsewhere, an elderly woman sat alone in her garden, watering roses that had bloomed faithfully every spring for decades. She watched the breeze move through the flowers and quietly sighed. They're getting closer. She had known your soulmate since childhood. She had witnessed heartbreaks, disappointments, and silent victories. More importantly, she knew something almost no one else remembered. Many years ago, before you and your soulmate had ever crossed paths, a promise had been made between two families. A promise that had never been fulfilled. She feared that forgotten promise was about to return. As evening approached, your soulmate visited a small chapel on the edge of town. It wasn't because they were deeply religious. It was because the silence there helped them think. They sat alone in one of the wooden pews, reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. Every setback. Every misunderstanding. Every unexpected encounter. Looking back, none of it seemed random anymore. It all felt like pieces of a much larger design. They closed their eyes. "If this is truly meant to happen," they whispered softly, "give me the courage to protect it." Outside the chapel, hidden beneath the shade of a towering oak tree, the mysterious observer watched patiently. Their phone vibrated. A new message appeared. Phase 1 failed. Another reply came almost instantly. Then begin Phase 2. The observer nodded. It's time. That night, several invitations for the future engagement celebration were quietly prepared. Your soulmate carefully wrote each name by hand. Family members. Old friends. People who had stood beside them during life's darkest seasons. Then they paused. One name remained unwritten. Not because it had been forgotten. Because they weren't sure whether that person deserved to be invited. It was someone who had once been like family. Someone whose absence had never truly been explained. After several moments of hesitation, they placed the blank invitation back into the drawer. Maybe some doors are meant to stay closed. Unbeknownst to them, that very person was already planning to appear, invited or not. Meanwhile, strange coincidences began multiplying. A florist accidentally cancelled an order that had never been placed. A venue manager received a phone call claiming the wedding date had changed. An old acquaintance unexpectedly contacted mutual friends, asking unusual questions about your relationship. Each event seemed insignificant on its own. Together, they formed a pattern. Someone was preparing the ground for confusion. Not by attacking directly, but by making everyone doubt what they thought they knew. Your soulmate remained unaware. Instead, they spent the evening imagining the future. They pictured a home filled with laughter. Morning coffee shared across a kitchen table. Rainy afternoons spent reading together. Ordinary moments that, with the right person, become extraordinary. Those dreams strengthened their resolve. No rumor could compete with the life they envisioned. But somewhere else, another conversation was unfolding. The mysterious figure entered an old storage room and unlocked a rusted cabinet. Inside sat a weathered journal tied with faded blue ribbon. Its pages contained names, dates, and events stretching back nearly 20 years. The figure flipped to the final page. There, written in bold handwriting, was a sentence that chilled the room. If they ever find each other, everything we've hidden will finally come to light. The figure closed the journal with trembling hands. They can never read this. Just before midnight, your soulmate received another anonymous message. This time it contained a photograph. It showed only the velvet ring box resting on the lakeside bench. The exact place where they had practiced the proposal. Beneath the picture were 6 unsettling words. I know exactly what you're planning. For the first time, your soulmate's heartbeat quickened. They looked around the empty room. Every window was locked. Every door was closed. Yet somehow, someone knew. Someone had been closer than they had ever imagined. Holding the phone tightly, your soulmate whispered into the silence. Who are you, and what do you want? Far away, hidden in the darkness, the mysterious watcher looked at another photograph, one showing themselves standing beside your soulmate many years earlier. A tear rolled down their cheek. I don't want to destroy your happiness, they whispered. I just can't let history repeat itself. The anonymous photograph changed everything. Your soulmate barely slept that night. Every sound outside the house felt louder than usual. Every passing car made them glance toward the window. They replayed the image again and again in their mind, the velvet ring box resting on the lakeside bench. Only one conclusion made sense. Someone had been there. Someone had watched every rehearsal, every hopeful smile, every whispered promise. But why? The next morning, your soulmate decided not to tell anyone about the messages. They didn't want fear to overshadow what should have been the happiest season of their life. Instead, they carried the ring everywhere, keeping it safely tucked inside the pocket of their jacket. If someone wants to scare me, they thought, they're wasting their time. Yet deep inside, uncertainty had begun to grow. Across town, the mysterious watcher entered an old bookstore hidden between two narrow streets. The owner, an elderly man with silver hair, looked up the moment the door opened. "I wondered when you'd return. I need the box." The owner hesitated. "You promised never to open it again." "I know. But circumstances have changed." Without another word, the old man disappeared into the back room and returned carrying a small wooden chest sealed with a brass lock. Dust covered its surface. It had clearly been untouched for years. "You understand what happens if the truth inside this box reaches them?" the owner asked quietly. The stranger nodded. "It will change everything." Meanwhile, your soulmate's closest friends had already begun making secret wedding plans. One friend searched for the perfect venue. Another spoke with florists. Someone else carefully prepared a guest list. Laughter filled every conversation. Everyone believed they were helping create the beginning of a beautiful future. None of them realized someone else was quietly crossing names off that very guest list. One by one. That evening, your soulmate visited the place where you first met. It wasn't a grand location. Just a quiet park where ordinary people walked their dogs and children played beneath ancient trees. To everyone else, it looked unremarkable. To your soulmate, it was sacred. They sat on the same bench where your first conversation had begun. Closing their eyes, they smiled at the memory. "I never imagined one simple conversation would become my entire future." Not far away. Someone watched from behind the trees. The mysterious figure held the wooden chest tightly. Inside it rested dozens of letters. Letters that had never been delivered. Letters written years before. Letters that could rewrite the story of your soulmate's past. The stranger whispered, "If you had read these when they were written, none of this would have happened." Suddenly, a familiar voice broke the silence. "I thought I'd find you here." Your soulmate turned around. Standing there was someone they hadn't seen in nearly 7 years. The reunion was unexpected. Neither smiled. Neither spoke for several long seconds. Finally, the visitor said, "You still come here?" "Sometimes. I hoped you'd forgotten." "I've forgotten many things." The visitor looked down. "But not everything." Without another word, they handed your soulmate a folded envelope. "Read it when you're alone." Before your soulmate could ask a single question, the visitor disappeared into the crowd. Back home, curiosity finally won. The envelope contained only one page. On it were handwritten words. "If you plan to marry, ask yourself one question. Why did everyone suddenly disappear from your life 6 years ago?" No signature. No explanation. Only that haunting question. Your soulmate stared at the page for several minutes. They had spent years convincing themselves the past no longer mattered. But now, old memories began resurfacing. Conversations that ended abruptly. Friendships that dissolved without reason. People who vanished almost overnight. At the time, they assumed life had simply moved on. Now they weren't so sure. Across town, the mysterious figure unlocked the wooden chest. Inside lay dozens of yellowed letters tied together with faded ribbon. One envelope immediately stood out. It bore your soulmate's name. The seal had never been broken. The stranger carefully opened it. Inside was a letter written many years ago. Its opening line read, "If you're reading this, it means I finally found the courage to tell you the truth." The stranger stopped reading. Their hands trembled. "No," they whispered. They were never supposed to see this. Meanwhile, your soulmate couldn't shake the feeling that someone was manipulating events from behind the scenes. Every coincidence. Every anonymous message. Every unexpected encounter. It all pointed toward one conclusion. Someone wasn't trying to hurt them physically. Someone was trying to stop the wedding. But why? Was it jealousy? Revenge? Or something much deeper? Late that night, a storm rolled across the city. Rain hammered rooftops. Thunder echoed through the empty streets. As lightning illuminated the sky, a black car quietly pulled into the parking lot outside your soulmate's home. The driver stepped out carrying a single package wrapped in plain brown paper. No return address. No name. They placed it carefully beside the front door before disappearing into the rain. The next morning, your soulmate opened the door and froze. The package waited silently on the doorstep. Inside was a small photo frame. The photograph showed your soulmate as a teenager, standing beside three smiling people. One of those faces had been torn away. On the back of the frame, someone had written 6 chilling words. "The missing face is coming back." Your soulmate's heart pounded. They recognized everyone else in the picture. But the torn-out person, no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't remember who it had been. Miles away, the mysterious watcher finally spoke to someone over the phone. "The engagement is only days away." A calm voice answered. "Then reveal the truth. It's too dangerous." The truth is always dangerous. Silence filled the line. Finally, the voice added, "They deserve to know who is really trying to stop this wedding." The call ended. The watcher slowly looked at an old mirror. For the first time, their reflection showed unmistakable sorrow instead of anger. "I never wanted to become the villain in your story," they whispered. "But if revealing the past is the only way to protect your future..." They took a deep breath. "Then you'll finally learn my name."